Practice of real estate and disclosures. Welcome to part 3, baby. This includes specialty areas on the California exam. Again, 25% of the licensing exam will be related to these topics. Finding a niche helps licensees focus their efforts and conserve energy and resources. A niche can be based on geography, demographics, property type, property value, or client type. An individual's unique characteristics, experience, and background are useful when deciding on a niche. Teams in a real estate brokerage function as firms within a firm, but are still supervised by the managing broker. Joining a team has advantages and disadvantages. Each team member specializes in certain aspects of real estate service. This can allow you to shine, but can also prevent you from learning about other aspects of the work. Each team member shares in the proceeds of the team. This could earn you money sooner than working on your own, but you'll earn less on each transaction. The experience and knowledge gained in the real estate field can translate to other careers. What are those? Oh, I'll tell you. Broker. Requires proper licensing as well as management ability, business acumen, leadership skills, and people management skills. Developer. Constructs improvements on land. Requires the ability to see opportunity, raise capital, and execute plans. Investor. Puts up funds to subdivide and develop land or purchase rental property. Realizes return when the properties sell or receives income from rentals. Requires deep pockets. Requires risk-taking and problem-solving abilities. Mortgage broker. Acts on behalf of buyers to find best interest rate and terms for a loan. Requires attention to detail, the ability to research, people skills, and the ability to clearly explain financial concepts. Real estate educator. Educates licensees and pre-licensees on laws, rules, and practices. Requires the ability to convey complex information in layperson's terms. Property manager. Manages properties for others. Requires multitasking, record keeping, bookkeeping, and reporting skills, as well as tenant relation skills. Appraiser. Determines the value of real property, commercial and residential. Requires licensing or certification per state requirements, and the ability to value real property according to established standards, and to prepare reports. Real estate attorney. Can legally broker deals and answer questions for real estate licensees. Requires a law degree. Real estate counselor. Assists clients in making informed real estate decisions. Requires real estate expertise and the ability to evaluate properties for their potential. Transfer Disclosure Statement, or the TDS. California sellers of residential property must provide buyers with a copy of the real estate TDS as soon as practicable and before transfer of the title. Residential home sales of dwellings of 1 to 4 units, including manufactured homes, require disclosures using the TDS. If the buyer hasn't received the TDS prior to making an offer, the standard residential purchase agreement gives the seller 7 days after offer acceptance to deliver required disclosures, including the TDS, unless the transfer is exempt. The TDS details the seller's knowledge of the physical condition of the property, as well as the items that affect the property. TDS disclosures include age and condition of the structure and systems, easements and fences, flood, drainage, and soil issues, zoning violations and non-permitted work, HOA obligations and deed restrictions, citations or lawsuits affecting the property, noise or nuisance problems, location of the property in a known earthquake zone. Only the seller may complete the seller's portion of the TDS. Additional sheets may be attached to the form if needed to fully explain the property's condition. The seller, buyer, and their agents sign the TDS. Buyers have 3 days after the seller delivers the TDS to rescind the purchase agreement based on the information about the property condition. The Agent Visual Inspection Disclosure, or AVID, and Seller Property Questionnaire, SPQ, forms can be attached to the TDS. The AVID form is a California Association of Realtors form completed by agents to document their required visual inspection of the property. The SPQ is a California Association of Realtors form that can be used by sellers to ensure that they consider all aspects of the property that may require disclosure to prospective buyers. An agent's responsibility regarding the TDS is to inform the seller regarding the legal responsibility to complete it properly, make certain it is completed thoroughly, perform a visual inspection, disclose any issues, and deliver the TDS promptly. Nature Hazard Disclosure Statements. The NHDS, or NHD, is required for most residential transactions involving property of 1 to 4 units. For other property types, the same disclosure requirements apply, but they don't have to be provided on the NHD form. Sellers may complete the form themselves using information available from state and federal agencies, or may use a third-party provider known as a natural hazard disclosure company to complete the form. The NHD discloses to buyers if the property lies within any of 6 natural hazard zones: flood hazard zone, dam failure inundation area, high fire hazard area, wildland fire area, earthquake fault zone, seismic hazard zone. The NHD should be provided to prospective buyers at the first opportunity. The residential purchase agreement requires that disclosures be provided to the buyer within 7 days after offer acceptance. Buyers who have made an offer before receiving the NHD may rescind without penalty after receiving the NHD, provided they do so by the stipulated deadline. Disclosure of material facts affecting property value. Disclosure laws in California, as a result of decisions such as in the Easton versus Strasburger case, are strict. Licensees must know the appropriate disclosure requirements, provide the proper disclosure forms to buyers, and make sure those forms are correctly completed. A material fact is one that would cause a party to take action or not take action regarding a property purchase, lease, or option. Licensees have an affirmative duty to disclose all known material facts about a residential property to a buyer. Sellers have a responsibility to disclose not only the things they have actual knowledge of, but also the things that a reasonable person would be aware of or should know about. These disclosure requirements apply to residential properties of 1 to 4 units and to manufactured homes. Disclosures that are normally required when selling residential real estate don't apply to court-ordered transactions such as foreclosures, divorce settlements, probate, bankruptcy, and eminent domain cases. Licensees have a duty to visually inspect properties and investigate potential issues. This duty does not extend to hidden areas or latent issues not known to the licensee. Visual inspection should focus on red flags that would indicate a possible physical issue with the property. Anything that seems like a problem should be followed up with questions to the seller. In California, both the seller's agent and buyer's agent must investigate and inspect potential red flags on properties. This duty applies to residential property of 1 to 4 units and manufactured homes. Again, it doesn't apply to court-ordered transactions. Licensees must disclose to all parties any known adverse material facts. A licensee is required to disclose any adverse material information to potential buyers that is not already disclosed by the seller before a sales agreement is made. Disclosures should be provided to prospective buyers as soon as reasonably possible before the offer is accepted. If a seller hasn't provided proper disclosure and deceit is discovered after closing, buyers can sue the seller for breach of contract or fraud. Buyers must take legal action within 2 years of taking possession of the property. If a seller hasn't provided proper disclosure and closing hasn't yet occurred, buyers can terminate the agreement and ask for a refund of their earnest money, or ask the seller to make necessary repairs or provide credit to the buyer. Disclose according to MAAP principles. Any information that is material, adverse, and actually known about the physical condition of the property must be disclosed to potential buyers. Common signs of foundation problems include cracks in basement walls, moisture in the basement, misaligned doors and windows, cracks in the drywall, and separation around garage doors. Common roof issues to look for include discolored or curling shingles, water buildup or ice damming in gutters, damage to flashing, water damage along fascias, and cracks, holes, or rotting on soffits. Common chimney and fireplace issues include creosote buildup on the exterior of the chimney, drafts near the fireplace, a cracked or sloping hearth or firebox, and loose and crumbling bricks. Common window problems include damaged or broken glass and screens, windows that stick or won't stay open, damaged hardware, and leaking or damaged seals, often indicated by fogged window glass. Fixtures are generally items attached to the property. These items stay with the property. Personal property is removed by the seller when the home is sold. Buyers should inquire about the condition, age, and maintenance related to heating and cooling systems, electrical systems, and plumbing. Common plumbing problems include water damage on ceiling or walls, leaking or blocked drains, clogged or leaking toilets, reduced water pressure, and soggy ground around the home. Common signs of electrical issues include switches that are warm to the touch, lights that burn out quickly or dim when others are used, burnt or discolored outlets, faulty appliances, and old or damaged circuit breakers. Common heating and cooling issues include hot and cold rooms, a furnace or AC unit that won't turn on when the temperature is adjusted, or a pilot light that won't stay lit. Unpermitted work could result in partial or full disassembly of the work to inspect it, as well as possible correction or restoration to the original state if issues arise. If there appear to be any additions or alterations to the property, buyers should investigate whether permits were pulled. Missing, cracked, displaced, or otherwise damaged roof components and shingles could be a sign of wind or storm damage. Fire damage can include discoloration in the attic or around windows and doors. Flood damage can include discoloration of walls, sagging or uneven floors, and a musty odor in the home. Standing water for more than 24 hours after heavy rain may indicate drainage problems. Common wood-eating pests include termites, carpenter ants, and powder post beetles. The presence of tiny wings or mud tubes indicate termite infestation. Carpenter ants leave behind a sawdust-like material called frass. Small holes bored in wood indicates the presence of powder post beetles. A stigmatized property is one that has a negative psychological event attached to it. Disclosure of all material facts, including information about a stigmatized property, helps sellers and licensees avoid liability. In California, the seller must disclose a murder or suicide that occurred on the property within the last 3 years. It's considered a material fact, and licensees are also obligated to disclose if they have knowledge of the event. Possible hauntings are also considered stigmas that must be disclosed to prospective buyers. If the event didn't occur on the property, it doesn't need to be disclosed. Whether the descendant or a former resident had AIDS must not be disclosed, because to do so would violate fair housing laws. Homes in Melrose districts are subject to additional property taxes that may not be readily apparent to buyers. Therefore, seller disclosure is required. California law requires disclosures for specific situations, including Megan's Law. While it isn't the seller or the seller's agent's responsibility to research registered sex offenders in the area, the sales contract must include a disclosure as to the existence of a public database where this information may be obtained. Natural hazards. 6 forms of natural hazards that may impact their property are disclosed on the NHD statement. Proximity to airports. Properties near an airport or under a flight path can experience high levels of noise and vibration. Disclosures can be made with a notice of airport in vicinity, which is usually included in the NHDR if necessary. Proximity to a ranch or farm. If the property is located within 1 mile of farm or ranch land, as determined by an NHD expert, a third-party disclosure company, the NHDR must contain a statutory statement called the Notice of Right to Farm. Natural gas and other hazardous liquids pipelines. Similar to Megan's Law disclosure, this is a notice that must be included that informs the buyer that the information about the location of these pipelines is available from an internet source. If the seller or seller's agent has actual knowledge about zoning that would allow industrial use of property in the area, this must be disclosed to the buyer. Former meth lab site. This must be disclosed even after it's cleaned up. A copy of the cleanup order must be provided to the buyer. Military ordnance location. If a former military training ground exists within 1 mile of the property, this must be disclosed due to the potential for explosives. Mining operation. If the property is within 1 mile of a mine operation, the property disclosure must contain a notice of mining operation. This is usually part of the NHDR. Sellers and landlords of properties built prior to 1978 must provide the buyer with a lead-based paint disclosure, as well as an EPA pamphlet describing how to minimize the dangers of lead. Buyers have a 10-day period in which to conduct a risk assessment for lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards. Lead poses health problems, and it may be present in paint manufactured prior to 1978. The Environmental Hazards Booklet, titled Residential Environmental Hazards Guide, a guide for homeowners, homebuyers, landlords, and tenants, describes several environmental hazards that can potentially cause a health risk and which apply to residential properties. The Environmental Hazards Booklet isn't required, but when it's provided to a buyer, the seller and agent do not need to provide further disclosures to the buyer about the hazards covered in the booklet unless there is a specific issue that affects the property. Need for inspection and obtaining verifying information. Seller disclosures are not always accurate, and sellers may not be aware of all defects with a property. A home inspection can determine the property's true condition. A home inspection uses a qualified individual to evaluate the physical condition of the home structure and systems, identify anything that needs to be repaired or replaced, document any health or safety issues that could affect residents of the home. Licensees should encourage all buyers to obtain a home inspection, even for new construction. A home inspection contingency is one of the best ways to protect the buyer's earnest money. If an inspection uncovers issues the buyer wants the seller to repair, it's the buyer's agent's responsibility to communicate those requests to the listing agent and follow up on the status of the repairs. California makes all inspection findings subject to disclosure if they are considered adverse material facts. Reports. Buyers should be advised to carefully review all reports obtained from financial inspections and investigations. Buyers should be prepared to act in their own best interests and according to contract contingencies based on the information provided. The buyer is obligated through the residential purchase agreement to give the seller copies of any investigation or inspection reports the buyer obtains for the property. The Residential Earthquake Hazards Report is a disclosure form used for sellers to notify buyers of the earthquake preparedness of a home and whether the home lies in an earthquake or seismic zone. The Residential Earthquake Hazards Report is only required for transactions where the property is a home built prior to 1960. The Residential Earthquake Hazards Report disclosure form is part of the Homeowner's Guide to Earthquake Safety, published by the California Seismic Safety Commission. Residential sellers must disclose to the buyer whether a property is in a Melrose district. Disclosure must include the amount of any fees as well as the assessment's purpose. Reports the buyer should expect to order or receive include the home inspection, pest inspections, environmental conditions or hazards, and title reports. Companies that provide national hazard disclosure reports generally include information covering all statutory disclosures in the report, including Melrose assessments. Servicing diverse populations. Real estate professionals are most successful when they work to understand and respect the customs and practices of other cultures. Working with colleagues from diverse backgrounds can be challenging but rewarding. Office diversity is the best way to provide services to a broad array of clients. A number of obstacles to home ownership have been identified, and these tend to have disproportionate effect on minorities. Obstacles to home ownership include younger age, lower income, denial of credit, language barriers, lack of affordable housing, and discrimination. Government loan programs, such as those run by the Federal Housing Administration and the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, are a critical component of introducing more homeowner opportunities for all of the underrepresented populations. Studies of home ownership and long-term residence show that these factors are tied to the development of strong, stable communities, regardless of other socioeconomic factors. Fair housing laws require non-discriminatory treatment of tenants and homebuyers. Members of NAR are obligated to conduct real estate activities in non-discriminatory ways as provided by Article 10 of NAR Code of Ethics. Real estate trade organizations focused on promoting minority homeownership include the National Association of Real Estate Brokers MAAP, real estate trade organization founded in 1947 as an equal opportunity and civil rights advocacy organization for African American real estate professionals, consumers, and communities in America. Its stated mission is to promote democracy in housing. The National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, NAHREP. Its mission is stated to advance sustainable Hispanic home ownership, and it describes itself as a purpose-driven organization that is propelled by a passionate combination of entrepreneurial spirit, cultural heritage, and the advocacy of its members. The Asian Real Estate Association of America is dedicated to promoting sustainable home ownership opportunities in Asian American communities. Its membership is open to all housing and real estate professionals who support its mission.
Hey, good job!
That is a wrap on the practice of real estate and disclosures.
Thanks again for watching, liking, subscribing, supporting, learning, growing. Bye!